Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are joining us. We are super excited about today in this session. We literally been overwhelmed with questions from all over the world, from South America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and here where we are sitting right now, good old Australia. Not much to say. We're just gonna get straight in because there are a lot of questions to answer.
Yeah, hopefully everyone's got about 4.5 hours. No, we'll try and keep it contained.
Now we're gonna try and get you out of there in an hour, but there are a lot of questions. Who are we? There's some people that are new to us, some people that know us really well. We are BetterBriefs, and we are an advisory and training business. We help marketers brief better. We help them how to get to better and more effective ideas, and we do that in 3 different ways. One is through bespoke training programs for really large global and national marketing teams. We also have 2 online courses that everybody can enroll in. Whole plug from Matt. It's starting the next course in
6th of October.
6th of October, brief writing, and then assessing ideas.
10th of November. Thank you for putting me on the spot.
There you go. I like doing that. Everybody knows that. And then how this business all started, we do a lot of knowledge sharing. We did the world first study into the state of marketing briefs already for your download on our website. And since then, we've written a best practice guide and done a whole bunch of other things. There's a QR code there, or you can just go to betterbriefs.com and it's ready for your download. And we doing all of this stuff because the state of briefs is not great and we're trying to make it a little bit better.
And here's some brands we've tried to make a little bit better for Pieter-Paul. So, you get out of the...
Yeah, sorry, eBay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so you might see your brand's logo on there. If you don't, then maybe reach out and give us a call and we can design something for you. Who are we, Pieter-Paul? And it's no surprise, actually. We've had lots of questions from strategists. Lots of strategists have sent us some curly questions, which is good. I'm not used to being down here in this corner. And that's Pieter-Paul and I are former agency strategists. So we worked in agencies for the better part of 2 decades. Each of us, we've worked in lots of places all over the world. I've actually worked in Shanghai as well. Lots of FEs. Pieter-Paul is still an FE judge, going on a decade now, APAC in Australia.
APAC in Australia.
Yeah.
And I think we put it up there, not to boast, but because it captures our philosophy of what effective communications look like. Organizations invest in marketing to drive better business results. So that should be the start point, and it should be the end point of every brief. So measuring effectiveness is actually a key component when you're writing a brief.
Yeah, and it's been a drought in Australia, so the sheep are looking skinny. But other than sheep farming, what we have been up to recently is another research project on better ideas. BetterBriefs is one half of the puzzle. I guess the other half is how do you assess creativity coming off a brief, because it's not the brief that enters the world, it is the ideas. So how do we make sure that the best ideas see the light of day through our response to them, and how we assess them professionally, with diligence, with imagination. So there is that available on our website, and there's also some great content pieces that have recently come out. One in Campaign about why you should never ask a friend to evaluate an idea. If you don't know that, then read that, Campaign Asia.
Yep.
There's a few other bits and bobs that have come out as well. So anyway, check it out. It's all on our website.
Over to your questions. That's what you're all here for. That's why we designed ourselves in the corner here. And Matt thought it was a good idea to start with the hardest question first. And why don't we put Matt on the spot with that question?
I thought you were going to go first, Pieter-Paul.
No, I'll read it out. What's the mistake veteran strategists still make when it comes to briefs? Thanks, Jess.
No, this is a trick question. Move on, Pieter-Paul. We don't make any mistakes, do we?
Answer the question.
I did have a good think about this, and I think that one of the things that can happen, and one of the things that we still experience as veteran strategists, is that we are better together when it comes to reviewing briefs, which is what we do the majority of the time now, rather than write briefs. We review briefs better as 2 brains versus 1 brain. So I think as a veteran strategist, think that you can solve the problem yourself. without bringing other perspectives and other people in. I think it's still a naive position to be in. So that is, I think, one mistake that we're aware of that we just don't, we continue to overcome through making sure that we're both reviewing briefs, making sure that we're bringing people in. Brief writing and brief approving shouldn't be an individual pursuit. It is a team sport, what we do. It involves other people. So that would be one mistake that I would try and avoid, or I'm conscious of avoiding anyway.
Yep. I think it's about the reason for the brief, the problem that the brief needs to solve. I think that many briefs don't have a clear reason for being. And I think I've been guilty and still am maybe sometimes guilty of, okay, give it to me, I'll figure it out. Whereas this should be super clear for everybody involved, right? Why is this brief being written? What is the challenge for communications to be solved? And if we're not clear on that, everything else in the brief just falls apart. All right. Getting the information balance right.
There were lots of questions on this, on what is the right level of information, what is too prescriptive, what is, what does the agency need? So yeah, we're going to try and take you through some of our philosophy and get into the questions as well.
All right. I guess maybe as a bit of an introduction, we believe that it's the core responsibility of a brief to do two things. First of all, it needs to guide the thinking of the agency. It needs to set them off in a certain direction. Some people think, let's create a really open brief and give the agency the freedom of creativity. No, that's not the right way of starting that relationship. Agencies react better to a type brief. That type brief should be super clear on what the problem for communications to solve is. In exceptional cases, there might be an opportunity because your competitor is dropping the ball or something, or there's a cultural event your brand wants to tap into. A brief becomes very clear in its guidance when it makes very clear choices, what is in and what is out for all the components of the brief, and it's super clear on the picture of success. And then a brief should be very clear in the information it provides. It should be super disciplined what goes into the brief, the core of the decisions, and what goes into the appendix, the supplementary set of information, or into the mandatories. And it provides the most salient information in the least amount of words, which means that your first brief will never be your best brief. The more you rewrite your brief, the shorter, sharper, and pointier it gets. So that's just as a word up front to frame the answers to the questions we're going to give here. So first one for you, Mats, how to get the balance between conveying all the necessary information, but making them short, punchy, and inspiring.
I would start not filling in the brief template from top and working my way to the bottom. I would put all the information that I know to the side, on one side, and what are the gaps in my knowledge. Start in a different document. Don't start in the template. The template can be should be the last moment that you're conveying your more concrete thinking into that structure. So, and what that will help you do is understand, okay, what are the gaps? What do I need to fill in? What am I repeating? What am I, what is not fitting necessarily? So I think if we get all that information on a different document, then translate that into the template, and then write and rewrite. Your first version of that template is not going to be the best one. So making sure that you've given yourself enough time to craft the words, review the words, rather than just sending it off.
All right, your turn.
What is the best balance between too much and too little background information in a brief?
I think the core of the background information should be captured in 2 or 3 sentences. The reason why you're writing a brief, I actually started with that today. That's the core, what should go into the brief. All the additional information, how you got to the purpose of the brief or the problem that the brief needs to solve, that can go into the appendix, and it should be part of your briefing. Well, you probably hear us talk about the difference between the brief, the document, and the briefing a couple of times today. The briefing is a beautiful place where you've got time and you've got attention span from the agency to give additional information. The brief itself, just 2 or 3 sentences with the very core of the background and the reason for the brief.
Yeah, the brief shouldn't be more than two pages, really. The core of the brief shouldn't be more than 2 pages. All right, a few here. Go, Pieter-Paul, hit me with them.
How do you recommend balancing sufficient detail to guide execution effectively? while avoiding over-specification that stifles innovation and creativity. From Tony, how detailed can a brief be without taking away the creative freedom for creative agency? And from Emil, and how do you keep the right balance between having really clear deliverables and wanting the creative team and agency to use some creative freedom? From Lily.
This is tricky, and it goes wrong so many times, I think. And how do you avoid being prescriptive? I think in some situations, and I've seen briefs that get so prescriptive that they're commanding the agency to come up with a certain storyline with certain characters featuring in that storyline over the first 5 seconds, and then again in the last 5 seconds. So it's challenging. We are briefing specialists to do a job for us. So what we need to do is kind of remove creativity from our brief, right?
Yep.
We just need to make sure that we understand what success looks like for the project. Success and objectives provide the backbone for creativity to start to work from, right? Like what are we working towards? Rather than what the solution is, what are we working towards? So the brief is what we're doing, and the creativity is how we get there in the end. The creativity is the bridge between your brief and what lives in the world. So it's tricky, but as soon as you find yourself starting to give answers, when you're writing taglines in messages, when you're trying to be overly creative, when you think your insight starts to get a little bit creative, if you're someone who wants an insight in your brief, there's moments that we start to put handcuffs on creativity. And channel thinking can be the same. We want to execute only in this channel, for example. So yeah, it's tricky.
And also just ask your agencies, what is too much? Am I giving you too much information? How would you like to have it organized? Every agency is slightly different, so ask them for feedback. They're in a very good position to give you that feedback.
But really clear deliverables are important, right? So what am I looking for off the back of this brief? Well, first, in the first instance, I'm looking for an idea to hang this campaign, this brand, whatever it is, off. And then we can get into the specifics of how you want that executed as well. So it's good to give agencies specifics on deliverables. What are we looking for, and a reason why those deliverables are right for the audience that we've chosen, not just because we've done that before and that's what we'll do again. So deliverables are important.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. And then we're just going to move you over a little.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Scooch
What's
in.
the best approach to writing B2B campaign briefs that offer strategic guidance but allow room for creative interpretation and execution? I'll take this one. Everything what Matt said just before, a B2B brief and how you approach a B2B brief should not be different than how you approach a B2C brief. All the same practices, all the same tools, all the same thinking still applies. You shouldn't distinguish between the two. We like to say that best practice is to have one brief that makes all the core decisions, and that should be strong and clear enough to distribute to all the agencies. However, in the requirement section or the deliverable section, you go specific what you want from all of those agencies, but the core of the brief should be the same. So Zarbin, just all the same approach as in B2C. All right. How do you create a balance between not including too many questions in the brief and not getting sufficient information to act on the brief?
This was a tricky one. We had to think about this one, right? But then I think we worked out that we shouldn't be asking questions in the brief. A brief is a series of choices, not a series of questions. So if we do have questions, they need to be answered well before the brief is transferred into your agency. So yeah, don't feel like you can't ask questions of your agencies, creative or media or whoever the agency is working on it. They may have the answers, which is great, but don't use it in the brief at the moment of briefing. Get that well and truly ahead of time.
Yeah, a brief is a series of decisions. It should be the summary of all the thinking you've been doing. This is not the document or the moment to ask questions. Yeah. Nadine? Your turn.
How do I know my brief is sharp and clear enough? Best tips when need for a course correct.
Well, we like to say that briefs are like a puzzle. All the pieces need to fit together perfectly. You need all the pieces to fit together perfectly in order to solve that puzzle, in order to solve the brief puzzle. I guess this is where writing and rewriting the brief comes in. As soon as you feel that anything is additional information that isn't linked to the core of that puzzle it shouldn't be in the brief, but it should go into the appendix or into the briefing. You have to take it out. You need to tell one clear, simple story, like a children's book, right? A children's book, everybody who reads it, I've got 2 kids, so I read a lot of children's books. Everybody's got the same lesson at the end. Oh, that story was about this or that. Everybody's got the same outtake, right? It's not about some adult book where we all have different philosophies and fictions. Everybody should have the same outtake after reading the brief. So make it that simple. Thanks, Carolina. How do you manage keeping a brief really clear when there's multiple priorities in one brief? I find this often causes confusion with our creative team. Well, I'm not surprised that the creative team is confused, Lily, because you shouldn't be putting multiple priorities into one brief. We like to say that one strategy equals one brief. And if those priorities are in conflict with each other, you probably have to write multiple briefs. And that's why your agency is confused. They might be a bit shy to push back on the brief, right? Times are tough. Agencies don't want to lose clients. They don't want to come across as unconstructive. But ask them truly, like, oh, there's multiple priorities here in the brief. Is the brief clear, or would you prefer that we give you multiple briefs, each on one priority?
Yeah, it feels like double the work, but it's actually not. Once you split out the briefs or the priorities into different briefs, you'll actually find that they write themselves a bit more easily. They're more coherent. They have clearer direction. You'll get people on board with them more easily. Obviously there is a budget. I think it's almost a false economy though, right? If we do multiple things in this brief, then we're going to make our budget work harder for us. It's actually the opposite. We need to be as focused as we can, because it's really important that we design communications to overcome that specific problem or opportunity that Pieter-Paul mentioned before. So if there are multiple challenges or jobs to be done, then it becomes difficult. We end up doing none of them well, and we don't use our budget in the right way. Just a note, there are also there's a Q&A function. I think I've just seen that, Pieter-Paul. So if any of this sparks more questions, please pop them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them.
Yeah, we'll pick them up in the end. Put in the Q&A, and we'll keep an eye on it. We can see it right here. So, but we've got plenty of more questions from you to answer.
So there are specific components of briefs, and we got a lot of questions on specific components of briefs. And just to give you a bit of understanding of our philosophy on what components should make it their way into a brief in I guess somewhat various guises, but there's different elements of a brief. So there's a bit of the brief that sets the context. As Pieter-Paul said, it outlines that challenge. It provides a bit of background into that challenge. So what is the information, the reason for this brief, and what is setting up your brief? What that then does is help you understand and define your objectives and communicate your objectives to your agency through your template. Those objectives have to be linked to your audience. How is the audience that I'm defining going to help me meet those objectives that I'm setting? What am I saying to the audience? What is the message that audience is going to resonate with that audience? And what are the reasons to believe that underpin that message, which will help that audience believe the message that I'm saying? So this is really these are the core components of every great marketing brief. And we don't need to, yes, there are other elements of a brief, the more practical elements of a brief, the considerations, the deliverables, the mandatories, all that stuff. But this is where your strategic core lies. And so this is what we should be communicating through to our agencies, internal or external, when we're briefing them. This is the information they need to get to work.
And it's visualized as a puzzle because all these different components of the core of the brief are connected. One shapes the other. And if one element or one piece of the puzzle changes, you probably have to amend and adapt and update the other pieces as well.
Absolutely. So what are the key elements that make a brief effective and clear for both the client and the team executing it? Well, hopefully we've just gone through that they are the elements that every brief needs. And there is a bit more detail. So what sort of objectives should I be setting? How do I define my target audience? How do I make sure that I keep my message as focused and well-defined as I can? So there's elements within each of those sections that we need to take into consideration, but broadly speaking, they're the components that every brief needs.
What is one tool or tip you can use to better define the problem you're trying to solve? Just maybe going back to what I said before, make sure the problem is defined in a way that communications can influence it, that communications can solve it. So that is your check. ask yourself, have I defined it in a way that comms can deliver a direct impact of this? So sell more stuff or make us more profitable, that is not a problem that you put into a brief. It is a great starting point for setting objectives. It probably comes to life as a commercial objective, but you need to break it down further. Why aren't we profitable enough? Are we losing our high value customers, or is the market down, or has the CEO said something stupid and is our reputation down, or are our competitors beating us with certain product features, or are we being associated with the wrong thing? You have to dig deeper and get more precise on what the problem is for communications to solve. And it sounds simple what I'm saying, but this is one of the weakest points we see with many of our training engagements. And also as an FE judge, I struggle to see this in many finalist papers. Even the papers that have been filtered through that are deemed as good, half of them lack a clear definition of what the problem for communications is to solve.
Yeah, and it is in two ways, right? As you mentioned, it goes upstream into a business problem, which marketing can only contribute something to, or it goes downstream into a consumer problem. So something that consumers are facing, and where the sweet spot is trying to find an understanding where the brand has a role in overcoming how people are perceiving your brand positively or negatively.
Yeah,
and that's what we need to overcome.
I think about attitude and associations, and think about behavior. Both of them can influence what the problem is.
Yeah. Define a key insight. Define just off the, just a really easy one. Define a key insight, and is it always needed in a brief? For example, an event brief, and these two are linked, obviously. Should all briefs have a key insight included, and how detrimental is it to not have one?
So I'm just going to do just a disclaimer. So as everybody knows, but just to reiterate, we are talking about the marketing brief, the client brief here first and foremost. That is the focus of our business. So let's just answer it from that perspective, because maybe there are some agency people here on the call. We're going to start with the client and the marketing brief.
Yeah, I want to start with where it goes wrong, first and foremost. So the problem is that there are often too many insights, things labeled as insights. There's, the customer insights team who give us their long list of insights. There's the insights that then make their way into the marketing brief in channel insights, media insights, platform insights, user insights. This word is just overused. And then we get into the creative agency who also has an insight. Then we get into the media agency who has an insight to unlock media thinking. So by the end of it, we've got 20 insights floating around. So where is the focus?
Yeah, and when you look at the definition of the word insight, it should be something illuminating, something that makes your eyebrows raise. And the problem is with so many insights, and the problem with the many insights that we come across, is that they're often facts or findings or quotes that are dressed up as an insight, but they don't really help lift the thinking. They're just there. It's just a label that's put on it. One thing we like to offer as an alternative for this: make your decisions insightful. So that a brief is a summary of all the decisions a brand has been making. It should be captured in the brief, and make those decisions insightful. The way you decide on what your picture of success is, the way you capture your target audience, the way how you link your reasons to believe to your message. Make that insightful, and that will lift the quality of the entire brief, rather than having this box that always overpromises and underdelivers.
Yep. And if you find yourself with 20 insights staring at you, find the one insight that is going to best unlock commercial opportunity. That is what we need. Any piece of fresh, new, directive thinking when it comes to our audience has to be linked to something that helps marketing make money. So it's tricky. Anyway.
So Loma, no, not necessarily. A brief is perfectly fine without an insight.
Yeah, as long as it's insightful. What is your perspective on the most two crucial type of insights required in a good brief? What's lacking? What are the most useless and or restrictive?
Yeah, like even in the creative brief and the insight there, An insight is a true insight is something really rare and precious. And yeah, I'm not sure how many of them you truly come across in your career. So talking about types of insight and ranking in that way is, yeah, I'm not sure if that's the
I
right
think
way of thinking.
Yeah, I think what we do is we often get really myopic that the insight should live within the audience that we're talking to as well. But an insight can live in a brand's history, it can live in something unique about the
Yeah.
product, it can live in culture that the brand can start to own. So there's many areas in which the insight can live. So getting too focused in on it just being the audience or the people who are buying your product, I think is a narrow perspective, and we often forget that insights can come from other places.
Sorry, Bernie. All right, Claudia, what's your advice for getting a strong single-minded proposition when stakeholders all want different things included? So, Claudia, preparing for this session, you made us feel a bit bad that you're stuck in this situation. Many marketeers, many brief writers are stuck in this situation. The brief writer in the cartoon sitting on the right, and the brief approver sitting on the left, giving feedback on the brief, and that feedback is all misaligned. So what happens is poor brief writer is getting unaligned feedback and is trying to force all these different components into the brief puzzle that don't fit. What happens? You get a Frankenstein brief. But what's the solution, Matt? How do you deal with this?
It's a good question. I'd start with the reasons to believe. I'd put all the things the stakeholders want in the reasons to believe and see if I can elevate a message that lives above all the things they want to say. So we can execute reasons to believe in multiple ways, in multiple channels, in different channels, depending on how much time we can spend with people. But I think we often try and get lots of things into the message that are actually reasons to believe. What are the proof points of this proposition? So how can we start there and maybe find a message that sits above it?
So, and there's also a process problem here. Having multiple people, multiple seniors approve the brief is not a great place to be in. In a perfect world, best practice is to have one brief approver. So one thing you could throw back at them is, great, excuse me, you're all saying different things, but who's the true approver of this brief? Because if I put everything you're saying in this brief, it's going to end up as a confused mess. So who is the true person here that's going to sign off on this brief? And then you'll find that if once people need to take responsibility for a brief, they'll back off and they'll think a bit more about what they're forcing you to put into a brief.
Fingers crossed, they might go the other way and just try and get everything in there to save their skin, Pieter-Paul. But
oh, good, yeah. Call us. We can help with that.
how can you create a truly binary brief? So ones or zeros, I guess, binary. Stakeholders and other colleagues will sometimes want you to add a lot, but it's noise most of the time. Is there a practical way to keep it focused?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love the phrasing here, because good briefs are binary briefs. They make very clear choices on what's in, what's out. Are we going left or going right? Is it black or white that we're putting our money on, or black or red when you go to the casino? So well done on framing that correctly. I guess I'll reiterate my process point. We're not process experts, but we see this go wrong way too often. Who is the brief writer? The person responsible for writing the brief. Who are the brief contributors? So those are people who sit on bits of information that can help shape the brief. That can be research and insights. It can be product. It can be maybe some sales managers who have bits of data to help shape the objectives. And then who is the brief approver? Having those clear roles defined up front, and maybe even we know of some companies that write the names. They literally have a box above the brief writer, brief approver, and literally have names next to it. In the olden days, signatures were involved as well, makes people responsible for the quality of that brief. So that's one suggestion we could offer.
I remember starting out an agency and there was a thing called a job bag, which was an actual thing that had all the documents in it. Anyway, the other thing is I would break down the elements before you even getting to fill in a template, right? So align people around the challenge, align people around the objectives, have little stand-up meetings around different topics, right? Don't expect everyone to be on the same page just because you've written a brief. There's a lot of strategic thinking that needs to happen before pen hits paper. So those are moments of alignment as well, not just for when the brief is written.
Ooh, the client
Yeah.
agency dynamic. Well, scrum them together. There's nothing scary about here. You're both should be moving in the right direction, should be moving in the same
Mm.
direction, because the goal is to put something out there that stands out, earns attention, and in the end, change people's mind and behavior. However, doesn't always happen.
No, there was lots of questions about this actually, client agency dynamics, and from our research we know, and it may seem fairly intuitive when you look at this vicious cycle that a poor brief kicks off, but this is the pain that both parties actually feel. So this is what's straining relationships. It causes a lot of business to go out to tender, unfortunately, or more project work to surface. So a poor brief does lead to really shallow creative thinking because people spend far too long trying to interpret the brief rather than solve for the brief. We get back a whole bunch of mediocre ideas as marketers. We think, hey, well, why haven't they gone deep on this? Why haven't they explored this or that? It doesn't feel like they've given it enough time. So we go through additional rounds of concepting, approvals. We spend more time, more money. The human cost is real. People are leaving industries in droves because of some of this frustration, but we get less motivated with the projects that we're working on. We just want stuff off our desks.
We get frustrated with the
Absolutely.
team, we get frustrated with the agency, we get frustrated with the brand.
Yeah, and we just want, and we settle for less effective work, right? It's not what we start out with in mind, but it's what we settle for, unfortunately. So this is part of that client agency dynamic, and by helping overcome this and using briefs as a tool to align and to inspire each other with, and we hopefully get to really great work. So here's one question from Fergus. Working on the creative agency side, we receive convoluted and bad briefs all the time. It is our responsibility as an agency. Is it our responsibility as an agency to see through the bad brief and find the true brief hidden within? Or is it up to us to teach the client on how we need a brief structured? Great question.
Yeah, great question. So I think it's the tendency of many agencies to try and be helpful and take the poor brief and try and solve it for the client. But it becomes a guessing game, right? A brief that isn't clear leaves all the choices and thinking to the agency. And technically, you don't want to do that because you are making too many choices and you might end up quite far away from where the brand, where the client wants to be. So we believe that both a marketeer in orange and an agency in blue, Fergus, has an active role when it comes down to the moment of accepting a brief. So it's the responsibility of the marketeer during the briefing, that moment of transfer, to check in with the agency. Is the strategic direction in the brief clear? And again, check in 1 or 2 days later. Are you guys truly clear what we're asking you to do? And then the agency shouldn't be saying yes to briefs that they don't understand. They have an active role to say no to briefs that they don't understand. So the agency person in this cartoon is doing the wrong thing. You have an active role. It's better to stop a poor brief early, use our research, use the figure we just put up, use some other stats that we found that's actually really expensive, to put a poor brief into a system, to hold the brief back, because we do appreciate it's not an easy conversation. When a client brief isn't underpinned by a clear strategy, do you take it on the chin and do what you can with what you're given, or do you push back and choose not to get involved until you've seen their working out?
Yeah, it's a similar thing, right? And I think it's tricky. I'm just trying to think how we work and how we used to work as strategists and with our clients and with the new relationships, with existing relationships. There's always a moment of calibration, and every client agency relationship is different. Even if it's the same agency and different clients, there is calibration that needs to happen between the two parties, right? How do we like to get briefed? What information is useful for us as an agency? Hey, what terminology do you use as a marketing organization? What is the language we should expect from you? What does it mean? So that calibration is really important. Otherwise, one person is, and there's going to be a great article about this. One side of the story is going to be speaking one language, and the other is going to be speaking a completely different language, and that's problematic. And agencies, for better or worse, they need to speak multiple languages. They need to speak the language of different clients and adjust and adapt
Yeah.
to different clients, and they need to inform their clients. Train is too strong a word. They need to inform their clients of the information they need.
But I would say you cannot execute a brief if you're not clear on a strategy. So you have to stop this, John. If there's no strategy in the brief, which often happens, you have to stop it because it's going to be an absolute mess.
A brief should be a contract, shouldn't it? What is the best way to shift briefing processes across both the agency and client relationships? From Toby. Another good question. It's a tricky thing. You can find you can find yourself in a position where briefing is being treated a certain way, and there might be a better way. And how do you make sure that everyone is on board? I think again that information share becomes really important. What information do we need? As people receiving a brief, to get the job done in the right way? What information has been lacking in the past? What could we substitute in there? Why has it come to this point where we're only getting this information, not that information? Why are we getting, why are the expectations shifting or not? So I think
pull out some good briefs and pull out some bad briefs, and literally mark them up. We don't need this. We do need that. This could be clearer. This is good. That might not be an easy conversation, but it's an important conversation to have.
Yeah, I think leaders within agencies as well kind of get an understanding of, the cost of head hours, on, how much rework is getting done within that agency, the building a case for why that process needs to shift. And that's a great starting point, yeah.
Next one. How do you create more accountability for poor briefing when jobs take a long time to complete, languish in approvals, or have scope creep? Well, I would say keep a really close eye, both if you're marketing team, or if you're in procurement, or if you're a marketing leader, keep a very close time on the amount of time and the amount of rounds or reworks that it takes to get to a product. Like, do a sum and add up the total amount of people that are touched by a single brief. And then you have two very powerful numbers. Oh, this time it took us 8 rounds and we had over 100 people involved with this project. How can we do some work and cut it down by 1 round? That's important stuff to talk about. I already mentioned, put names on templates and make people responsible, and make sure that the people who approve the brief are the people who approve the idea. That's another hack that you can apply. We often see that all the seniors come in at idea approval stage and they've got no idea what the brief is. The person who approves the brief is the person that should be approving the idea.
There's also a confusion about which brief should be used. Do you use the marketing brief, the brief the client writes, brand rights, or do you use the brief that the agency has written? And it's something that we oscillate on. The creative brief is closer to the creative product, but a good marketing brief can inform the creative product as well. So, and lots of creative briefs don't have the detail of a marketing brief. So again, it might be easy to say both, but I think that decision.
Now, just be clear. From the start, we're going to use the marketing brief or the creative agency brief to evaluate the work. The worst situation is that both parties show up with their own brief, which is different than the other one. So that causes confusion.
Because what often happens, if you get a poor brief, right, a poor brief from the brand or from the client, you tend to rewrite the brief as an agency person, and you try and get to a better version of a brief, which doesn't get approved internally within the client. They may not be capable to approve the brief, or you just don't want to show it as the agency. But again, you're deviating from that original intention, whether that intention was poor or not. There's a moment of misalignment to start with. So
All right, let's keep going. Rachel's question is, do you have advice for managing volatile briefs where details and direction change even after the agency has been briefed? I like to live in a world with final briefs that don't get edits, but I don't know if that's possible. Poor Rachel, virtual hug for you. That is something we see more and more of. And there were actually 3 articles in the trade press lately, and we wrote about this. It's this concept of fluid briefs, creating briefs that change on the go. And to be honest with you, a brief is a contract. You're asking a specialist to come up with something that you can't do yourself. If you start changing the brief, then things get really, really messy when the agency has already started work. Well, just take it out of category, right? when you've signed off on the plans for a building and you start changing the plans halfway, the builder is going to charge you a truckload of money. So that is not the right thing to do. We need to have fixed briefs.
Yeah, this sounds expensive to me. And I'm not sure how you get to an idea. You might be able to, on the fly, deliver executions, and I've seen lots of brands do that. Execute against a central idea once the idea is agreed, but you can't get to an idea with a fluid brief. It doesn't work.
Rachel, we want brands to write less briefs that are better, that lead to ideas that last longer. Like the best ideas last for years. So you don't have this notion of, I need to write fluid briefs, I need to write many briefs. Just write better briefs that lead to better ideas that last longer. I'm going to roll you back into the screen a little bit.
You keep pushing me out. There you go. All right. Now,
let's talk about culture.
Yeah, there was quite a few questions about culture, creating a culture of better briefs. And there is a big gold Effie on the screen here. Why is there a big gold Effie? I think that in organizations where a culture around briefs doesn't exist, then there's also not a culture of effectiveness. There's not a culture of accountability, and there's not a culture of celebrating things that perform well. Yes, things can be creative, and that's great. And creativity has an influence on commercial outcomes, but we need to get into the habit of measuring setting out to measure what success looks like from the start. And that's the reason the FE is here, because effectiveness should be what drives us, trying to get to more effective work. And so look at FE case studies. If you want to start to build that culture, look at highly creative work that has been recognized for its effectiveness. Go to the IPA database, go to the FE database, download cases. You'll see cases in your category. Start to talk about those cases, unpack what's working and what's not working. Well, what's working most of the time in those cases, because then you can see that, yes, it may not happen tomorrow. And some of the clients that we worked on, it took us years to get to a culture of great briefs and effectiveness within that organization. And it is a journey, right? So it's not going to happen overnight. But as we start to understand what is good for us, we can start to plot that journey. You're moving me on, Pieter-Paul.
Yes. How do you build a culture around great briefing when everyone is focused on delivering content as quickly as possible?
Yeah, you got to take a step back.
Yeah. Is that content being effective? And I like to say, talk about money. When you start talking about money, everybody listens, including very senior people in the organization. And briefs are about money. They're about significant investments of money to use creativity to drive a better business result. So don't talk about delivery of the content. Yes, we understand that the world is hungry for content, but understand what the content is that you actually need to write a brief for and how it is effective, and put that all on a brief. Hopefully that helps, Martin.
Yeah, and you shouldn't need a brief for every piece of content. Like not a fully fledged strategic brief that you can, once you've got an idea in place, you can execute quickly. Everyone just has to be really clear on what that idea is, and you get into a rhythm of execution, right? You get into a rhythm, and it can be a task-oriented brief, and we'll talk about that in a second. But those smaller briefs and jobs, they're fine. Like, get them through quickly, build a team around it, build dynamic culture around that. But the first, that input brief has to be strong.
Yeah, and once you have a couple of good briefs, save them in a data bank, hold them up as examples of good work, because everybody's always looking for and asking what a good brief looks like.
Yeah, here's one. We work as an internal design and content team within an enterprise software company. How do you develop a culture where people learn to embrace using briefs and don't just see them as busy work? Absolutely. We see lots of software companies who have software solutions in place where it's pretty much hit send on a button, never talk to a person, brief goes into system, it's tracked, people can see when it's opened, etc., etc. It's become completely dehumanized. And so in that sense, it does become just another box to tick.
Oh, you can make it really dramatic, and you can send it to the hairdresser, and they don't get to tell the hairdresser what their brief is, and the hairdresser just starts cutting. And might be a really radical way, or you can just give this as an example of how important the brief is.
Yeah, and I would sort of lead from the front here. I would cherry pick a few of the more important, larger briefs, and I would, find an advocate on your marketing side. I'm sure there is one who sits as a colleague, and you can use, together build an example. That's all you can start to do. How can I help CEO, non-strategic account managers realize the importance of creative briefs and not just the functional ones?
I think maybe use our research, talk about money, as I said before, use our findings, especially from the BetterBriefs project. It tells a story of utter disconnect between marketers and agencies on a global scale, no matter if you look in the US, UK, Australia, or other countries. It is important to get right. Without a good brief, you can't get to effective work. It's as simple as that.
What if you told the CEO, "I'm not going to show you the creative work," and you're not going to see the creative work unless you see and approve the brief. If you're approving the creative work, then you need to approve the brief.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a helpful way of thinking about it. Like the best organizations, the CEO doesn't get involved in approving of creative work. The best CEOs, the best leaders understand that they don't have to like the work, to like what the agency does in order for it to be effective. Like a 60-something-year-old CEO of a company that targets 20-something-year-old is not your target audience. So his personal opinion or her personal opinion is irrelevant. All right, next
All
one.
right, and I hope the boss of the person who asked the next question is not on the call. Hopefully not. This is my situation. After 3 years of successfully building and running a marketing department, I now face a leadership team that doesn't provide clear direction or compensation. This is compounded by an internal political struggle led by a sales manager who is actively hindering the department's growth, leaving me feeling like my efforts are unappreciated and that the company is at risk of losing all the progress I've made. How do you manage?
Yeah, again, I would say let's talk about money. Elevate the conversation from the painful day to day. Talk about money. Talk about how good marketing, how good briefs, how good ideas deliver margin protection, right? Everybody's interested in profit. Everybody's interested in margin. Talk about how important creative thinking ideas is to secure future demand, future inquiries for your business. And then also, I'm a bit concerned about the first bit of this question. Make sure that your organization has a clear company strategy in place. And if it doesn't have a clear company strategy in place, everything else becomes really hard, including writing your marketing strategy of that overall company strategy. And you need that marketing strategy to write a good brief. If there's nothing in place, everything becomes a guessing game.
Tricky. All right, let's talk about some templates and some more practical stuff. So this is what I was talking about previously, right? There's different kinds of briefs, and this may be a simplified view, but there is a brief that asks for new thinking. There is a new strategy that's been developed, and it's requiring new thinking off the back of it. Whether that's creative thinking, media thinking, PR thinking, whatever it is, you are conveying a strategic intent through to your agencies. That was what we call a marketing brief. It has many names, but let's just call it that. And then there's a task brief, something smaller. It is an extension of existing thinking. The thinking has been done. The strategy has been set. All we need is to execute in a new channel, in a slightly new format, with a new call to action, whatever it is. We don't need to overbake those ones. What we see in lots of organizations is they overbake the task briefs and they don't spend enough time on the marketing brief. So they think they deserve equal amounts of attention within the organization. So more time on the orange, and we can fly through the ones in the blue. Great.
What's the best way to create a modular set of briefs, ranging from a full input brief to a mini brief for a small project or a single asset? Now, less brief templates is better. It sounds like there's a lot of different brief templates here in this company to get your head around. That means that your agencies also need to get a head around lots of different brief templates. We've worked with a lot of global organizations that just have 2 brief templates in place. One for new ideas and one to execute existing ideas, the task brief that Matt was talking about. So less is more, Memsy.
Yep. What is the best format to gather the relevant information from clients for a brief? So new and emerging clients, I take that. Firstly, the client needs to own the brief. Let's be clear about that. So the client needs to be briefing you in written form. You can help them get to that written form. And that could be through a series of workshops. It could be unpacking various elements of the brief, as I mentioned, but the owner, the responsibility lies with the client to make sure they're transferring the information through to you, whether they're new clients or existing clients. Yes, we can help as much as possible, but again, they need to, otherwise there is the fear that always resides in me, which is, are they if they haven't made those choices, if we've made the choices as an agency, then they can back away from them. So again, get them to make the choices, help them if you can. What are the best practices in developing creative briefs that have embedded in the social context input, provided the opportunity to deliver campaign platforms that extend smoothly from traditional media to social platforms without other specific social briefs needed? This is what we're talking about, right? So firstly, your strategy should take into consideration any social context and input. And then there should be one strategic core to your brief, which can brief every agency from creative to media to PR to social to whoever. The strategic core, the intent is the same. The deliverables and the practicalities for each of those agencies are very different. So having addendums or appendices or specific practicality sections for each agency is completely fine, but the same core brief.
We like strong brand platforms, strong idea platforms that can last a long time and can get executed in all the channels and react to all kinds of cultural situations and be brought to life in all different kind of cultures, rather than all this very specific stuff. I work in a niche that's very technical and often misunderstood by agencies. What steps should I include in my briefs that build their understanding of the dynamics of for my industry? I usually attach a primer on our industry dynamics and our positioning document, but it feels like they just roll their eyes at it and apply some funnel or framework of their own. Well, I guess this is where you really need to invest time and force them almost to listen to you. It can be virtual, can be in real life. Immerse them into your category. Take them on a journey. You can do this in a dedicated immersion session. You can do it during the briefing. Remember, briefing is the moment of transfer. Force education if they're not listening, and otherwise get rid of them, I would say. But yeah, they need to understand your category. It is pivotal. We do that with every new client we got, and we've got some weird and wonderful ones in categories we don't understand. You have to understand the category to deliver good and effective work.
That's $100 million account that Jens is now walking out the door of some agency.
Yeah, maybe. Well, they need to listen.
How can I write better briefs for my team? They can join our course, surely.
Oh, yeah. Do this, Shannon. Yeah, well, and Shannon, there's also a best practice guide on available for you as well. But yeah, that's you need to work on, if you want to get better at briefs, there's 3 things you need to work on. Skills. Many marketers have not been trained in how to write briefs. Tools. Are the tools in place? Is the brief template all right? And that kind of things. And process. You heard me talk about process.
Is that right? The last course for 2025.
Last course for 2025. Ooh, plug. Okay, we need to get people out on time. Rapid fire questions. How much detail on deliverables should I give?
As much as you like. You can give as much detail on deliverables as long as you've worked with your media agency to say these are the deliverables. These are the ones that we're sticking to. Don't just include deliverables that you're never going to execute in.
It's not part of the core brief. So you can get really prescriptive and extensive here. The core brief should be 1 to 2 pages. This is not part of it. So get detailed as possible. Get as detailed as possible.
Yeah.
Next one.
You go. What's the number 1 do and don't to write a better brief?
KISS. Keep it simple, but I like to say keep it single-minded. Make sure everything is single-minded, and you can check that by giving it to your children at home, your cousin or your granny, or you can get even AI to check if stuff is single-minded. Great way of using AI.
And I guess the don't then is don't try and please everyone, because not everyone's going to be pleased with a single-minded brief. This is very similar. What's the best way to build a brief? Do's and don'ts. Well, don't build it from the top and go to the bottom of the template. Understand what you know and what you don't know and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and let the message maybe be the last section you think about. Let it be the summary of all the choices you've made. Let it roll out of all of your thinking rather than trying to shape it really early on.
Next one. How do I educate my team on the value of a better brief?
User research. Our research has proven that marketers worldwide believe that up to 30% of the marketing budget could be going to waste due to poor briefs. So think of your budget and think about 30% more. That's the potential of a good brief.
And talk to someone senior in the agency that you work with, get them to elaborate, get them in a room and say, hey, this is the power of that brief that you gave us that was super clear.
And use a second piece of research as well. Talk about the amount of additional rounds and reworks that you go through with your agency and how you can bring that down.
What are the questions I should always ask myself before sharing a brief as a bit of a quality check?
Do I get the strategy? Am I clear on the marketing strategy? Have I got a clear picture of success, or have I got access to a clear picture of success so I can set the clear objectives? I reckon if you're not clear on those two things, you can't write a brief, Julia.
Cool. How do I write a brand preference campaign to get buy-in? The same way that you write any other campaign to get buy-in, through the use of data and understanding where the brand needs to be and what it's going to take to get there.
Yeah, there's no different way of approaching that specific brief.
No. How can I speed up brief adoption? So what we assume here, Tammy, is that briefs aren't being written or received or something. There's no briefs in place. I think just show what goes wrong when briefs are verbal or they're not as structured as you'd like them to be. Understand how many rounds, how many times do you go back and forth? Is it as clear? Is the work as good as it could be? So again, adopting a brief into an organization is something that is 101 really.
How to make the brief inspiring for creatives? Well, Jacopo, invest in the long lost art of the briefing. Don't just send it over. Think about an immersive experience that you really take your agency on a journey. Start with why you've written this brief. What's the purpose of this brief? Then bring to life a certain key element of your brief in a dramatic way. This is time to have fun. This is time to immerse the agency. This is time for the agency to ask questions. Agencies asking lots of questions is a good thing. They are onboarding mentally what they're being asked to do. Agencies that are quiet is not a good thing. So invest in the briefing. That's my answer in 3 words.
Yeah. All right. 5 more questions to go. We've got a minute. How much time should you spend on writing a quality brief? As much as necessary. There is no time limit. Making sure that it's approved and aligned can take a day. It can take a month.
Make sure your first brief is never your best brief. So definitely version 2 or 3 will be better. How can I use AI to write better briefs? Excellent question, Roberto. Don't use AI to write the brief for you. Use AI to define specific elements of your brief. So when you're stuck on objectives and the linkage between certain objectives, or if you're not sure if your brief is single-minded or if your message is single-minded, use it to refine elements of your brief. Don't use it to write the entire brief. It's not intelligent enough for that yet.
What do people almost always forget, omit in a brief that's utterly important? Budget. Budget is important. People need to understand how much they have to create what they need to create.
And linking the objectives, Erica, that objectives aren't linked enough. But we want to see linkage between behavior and commercials and attitude. Behavior sits in the middle there.
Quick, Pieter-Paul, 2 to go. What companies consistently write great briefs in your opinion? I don't think there's consistently any great companies. I think there's pockets within lots of organizations that write briefs, and the challenge is to make that more widespread. Everyone that's been trained by us, obviously, Pieter-Paul, is the short answer.
And then how do we make sure our brief is clear enough for the agencies? Well, first of all, it needs to be single-minded. We touched on it a couple of times. And second of all, there's nothing holding you back with maybe sharing the brief prematurely with 1 or 2 senior agency leaders or strategists and ask, hey, are you happy with this? Is this setting you off in the right direction? Thank you all for sharing all these questions with us. We got it done in 1 hour. Matt's going to check for the Q&A, but I think we're fine there. Don't forget to download all the good stuff on our website to help you get to better briefs. And hopefully, we'll see you next time. Ciao, ciao.